Okay, welcome to today's session. Today is going to be a Q&A for the Python class. Basically, we're going to be reviewing the feedback we got earlier, and we're just basically going to be explaining some concepts that have been giving some people blockers, basically. Okay, but to kick off today's session, we're going to be looking at how to use GitHub, okay, and how to basically push your code to GitHub, create a repository, clone your repository, add new code to your repository, and basically update the repository on GitHub. Okay. Yeah, so this is GitHub. This is my username. This is my account basically. And if you were asked to basically start a project on GitHub, you'd first of all create a new repository. So what is a repository? A repository is basically like a folder, okay, but on GitHub basically. So it's a folder that basically tracks changes that happen within it. Okay, so if you make a change to a file, the folder is going to know that you made a change to that file, and it's going to give you the ability to go back to the previous version of that file, basically. So that's what version control is. You have the ability to switch between versions and to basically update versions and track versions. Okay, and so we can see a list of all the repositories under my account. Okay, and basically I'm going to create a new repository. So whenever you start a new project, it's best that you create a new repository on GitHub first, because you're going to need it to clone and to commit changes. Okay, so I'm going to call this GitHub demo. Okay, and basically this is just going to check whether this folder name is available under our GitHub username. So GitHub will not allow you to have two repositories with the same name. Okay, I'm just going to add a description. Okay, so live demo of basic GitHub and Git usage. Okay, and somebody will ask the question, what's the difference between GitHub and Git? Okay, so GitHub is basically like a cloud platform that stores code, that stores your version control history, and Git is basically a command line tool or computer tool basically that performs operations, creates this version history, updates this version history, and basically pushes to GitHub or whichever other code repository you're using. Okay, so there's Bitbucket, there's GitLab. Okay, but GitHub is very common, and that's what we'll be using for the course of this program. Okay, and basically adding a readme.md file basically just helps to describe the project. Okay, so it's going to be displayed by GitHub whenever somebody views the repository. So it makes it your markdown. Okay, but you can check that out if you're interested in maybe styling your repository. Okay, and we're going to add the gitignore. What's a gitignore? A gitignore is a list of files that Git should not add to its version control history. Okay, so a gitignore is a file, okay, that lists all the files that Git should not add to its version control history. So maybe what we wanted to protect like our secrets. Maybe we have like some environment secrets, maybe like your token, okay, for maybe whatever application, okay, and you want to keep that token a secret. You basically add whatever file that is storing your token to gitignore, and Git wouldn't store that file. If you didn't do that, basically whenever you push to GitHub, that file with your secret is going to be uploaded to GitHub. So that's why I make use of gitignore to basically ignore certain files. We can also ignore files that are large and shouldn't be stored basically. So imagine maybe you're compiling your code or you basically have builds, okay? So you don't want to commit those because they change often and they're large, okay? So there's no point in keeping version control. It's better to just track your code, okay? And we can actually add a license, okay? So almost every license here is an open source license. MIT license is pretty common. We don't really, that doesn't really bother us for this basic tutorial. I'm just going to pick MIT. And you see, yeah, that's basically all we need to set for creating a new repository on GitHub. And as you can see, my repository has been created with a gitignore, a license, and a readme.md, which is readme.markdown file. Basically, MD stands for markdown file. Okay. And basically, we can just get to actually using it locally. Okay, so if we wanted to clone this code locally, okay, we just go to code and we ask it to teach us how to clone. Okay, and there are different ways of cloning with GitHub. Okay, you can access your repo through HTTPS, And in that case, you'd authenticate through personal access tokens, basically like passwords. Okay, or you might be asked to log in with your browser whenever you push or similar. Okay, and then you can also make use of SSH. That's super secure shell. I make use of SSH. Why? Because it's easier and it's basically faster when you are making lots of pushes. Okay, so it takes a lot more setup, but then when you've got it set up, it's much more faster for you to use. Okay, and then there's GitHub CLI, which is like a totally different command line tool. You have to install this separately and work with that separately. Okay, I don't make use of that, so maybe you can explore that if you want to install that. Okay, but we're going to be making use of SSH for this tutorial. Okay, let's try HTTPS. I have my own setup set up with SSH. I'm going to use SSH, but most of you would use HTTPS for your own repository. Okay, and I'm just going to tell GitHub that I want to clone this file, this repository. Okay, so you can just think of it like a folder on a computer on GitHub. Okay, and we can basically tell Git to clone. Okay, so this is PowerShell. Okay, this is PowerShell, Windows PowerShell. If you are using Ubuntu, you could basically run Git from your command line as well. But we can access Git from PowerShell as well. So that's what I'm going to do basically. And I don't want to clone this folder directly in my root directory, okay? That has all my files. No, I want to go to documents and actually have a folder for coding. So I'll just change into that, okay? And because this is zero training, I already have a folder for that. So I'm just going to change into that. CD means change directory, okay? So we're moving our cursor, okay, or we are moving basically our cursor like command line. Basically, what we will be doing from File Explorer, we are moving our cursor through the various folders on our system, trying to navigate a specific folder on our computer. Okay, so that's what CD does. So I'm CD into zero training, okay, and we just run the git clone command and we pass it the URL we want to clone. Okay, so git clone, then the URL we want to clone. You can get this from GitHub. You can get it from here, okay? So you just clone basically. And I'm going to clone. And it basically clones into the repository name, okay? So it's going to create a new folder for us and copy all the content into there. So my SSH file or config file makes it of a password, which I'm going to type right now. Okay. So basically that's part of the beauty of SSH. So it's pretty fast. No need to log in or sign in on GitHub when I'm trying to push or pull. And then I can add like passwords basically. So it's worth the setup, but it's like it takes a little more to set up. Okay, if you'd like to look at that, you can check out the authentication docs on GitHub. Okay. And basically we have cloned GitHub demo. Okay, so I can change into that, CD into that. Okay. And we can see all the files that are currently there. There's Jtag, there's a license, there's a readme.md. Okay. Yeah. So let's look at this from File Explorer because I like to point out some. Okay, so that's documents, coding. Yeah. Zero training and GitHub demo. Okay, and then you can see there's a hidden file, the .git folder basically. And basically, this is how you can determine that a folder has version control on it, okay, or a set of files have version control on it. Anytime you see this .git file, that means that there's version control going on. Okay, so this is what Git uses to track old objects, old versions of files, and just makes diffs. Okay, so that's like tracks differences between files. Okay, and stores them in a .git folder. So this is hidden. Okay, if you want to view it, you have to turn on hidden items on Windows. Okay, or if you are on Linux, you'd run something like list or. Okay. Yeah. So let's say we wanted to add a new file. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a new file. Basically, let's say it's a Python file. Okay, so hello.py. Yeah, I want to change the extension to hello.py. Okay, I'm just going to open that in VS Code. So we could have actually opened VS Code directly from our command line using the code command line command basically. That's going to open VS Code for us, but I choose to open it from my file explorer. Okay, So whichever you prefer. This is actually much faster, but I just wanted to give you guys a demo of that. Okay, and we have a hello.py file. Very simple. We're just going to do the basics, which is what print hello world. Okay, and we can just test that that runs. We can test that that runs by just running python hello.py. Okay, so we are in the same directory as the hello.py file, and we just run python hello.py. We get the output hello world. Okay, as expected. So we added a new file. And how do we add new files to the version control? Okay, so because we added a new file to our folder, most of you will expect that JIT would automatically detect that and just add it to your version control or similar, but no, you have to specifically tell JIT that, hey, you want it to add this to version controller to start tracking this file, okay? And so let's just view the changes we've made so far. We can view that with JIT status. Again, we see that we have an untracked file, which is hello.py, which we just created, okay? And you can actually just add that JIT add hello.py. Okay, so we added it to our staging basically. What is staging? Staging is basically the final step before adding something, committing something to the file history. Okay, so you can think of it like a database. Okay, so by staging, we create a new session. Okay, and we add that to the query. Okay, then by committing, we have committed that to the database and it's been persisted. Okay, so we create a new log and basically modify the version control. So we can just check our status again. And we see that we have a new file that's to be committed. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you made a mistake and you unstaged the wrong file. You staged the wrong file. You can run git restore staged file to unstage the file. Basically, that's to remove it from stage, remove it from query, or basically remove it from being about to be committed. Okay. And maybe we have another file. Maybe we change something else again. So I'm opening VS Code now, and I want to add a new file. Maybe instructions.txt. Okay, so clone Jtag repository. Um, add files to git stage. Commit files basically. So this is just a new file basically. And maybe we want to check status again, and we see this file, and we want to just add all the files that have not been committed, and all the new changes basically. You can just do git add all. Okay, that dash A stands for add all. Okay, and basically we can check our status again, and we can see that all files are about to be committed. So every file in green means it's about to be committed if we make a comment. Okay, and I can just make any commit now. So git commit, then we specify the message, which is what you can specify a really long message. So I'm going to specify first commit to GitHub repository for, okay, and then we can drop down again. That shift enter. I just press shift enter, okay, and we can drop down and say GitHub live demo. And it's very good to get very descriptive comments. Okay, so we try to be as descriptive as possible in our commit messages to help us be able to track what happened basically and to understand the history of our file. So good comments mean that we can track our repository and be able to like determine when we made changes to what, again, and understand what's going on just from the commit messages. Okay. Example comments. Okay. And I can just close that. Awesome. So we see we created a new commit to the master branch. Okay, and it returns first commit to basically the message we passed. Okay, and we can just check git log to see all the files, all the comments rather that have been made. So we see the initial comment made when I created the repository. Okay, and that's called initial comment always by GitHub. And then we see this new commit I just made now, which is called first commit to GitHub repository and has a description under like GitHub live demo example commit. Okay. And this is like the most recent commit. Okay, so we can just run git status now. And we see that there's nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. Okay, so we don't have any on stage changes. We don't have any changes that have not been added to Git. Okay, and we can also see that they're telling us that our branch is ahead of our origin master, which is our remote. So whenever we're working with GitHub and Git, we always have two different basically setups or two different machines or two different versions of our repository. There's the remote version, which is the version that is on GitHub. And there's the local version, which is our version that we're working with right now, which is Git. Okay. So we always have to keep our remote in sync and update that. Okay. And the first thing we do before we ever push, we should always pull. Okay. But before we get to that, we should list all our remotes. Okay. So Git remote V, we list all our remotes. Okay. And we have origin. Okay. So origin has this URL basically, which is the URL we use to clone. Okay. And we can just do Git pull origin master. We specify the branch. Okay, so what are branches? Okay, branches are basically different versions of a folder, basically. What does that mean? We can have multiple branches, which you have multiple um versions of a folder of the repository, okay, at once. So instead of having to revert to see a new version, we can have multiple branches. Okay, so we can have a master branch, okay, and we can have a development branch, which has like the bleeding edge cut or like most recent code, okay, and we can like have another production branch, okay, that holds like our stable code for like final production. Okay, so basically we have multiple branches in GitHub. So I'm just going to pull origin master. Okay, I'm going to ask for my passphrase to my SSH key. Okay, and I just signed that, and they told us, well, we're already up to date with our origin master, so we can push to that. Okay, so git push origin master and ask for my password again. Awesome. So what do we get? We get lots of information. We get that we have 5 objects we are pushing. Okay, and they basically we reuse like some. We have some reuses. Not all files were changed completely. Okay, and we basically get the commit, the new commit. Okay. So we can check our repository actually because our repository has been updated based on this. So we just reload this and we see our commit message and we see the new files we created. Okay, so we can actually just view that hello.py, which prints hello world. Okay, and instructions are text. Okay, but let's say we want to create a new branch. Okay, so how would we create a new branch? We create a new branch from git command line. Okay, so we can do git branch dev, and we've created a new branch. So you can list all our branches by running git branch. Again, if you have questions, please you can start dropping them in the chat box. This is more of like a Q&A session, so it should be somewhat practical, and you can feel free to interact and interrupt. Okay. So we have our branches, okay, and we want to basically switch to another branch. So we do git checkout dev, which means we are switching to branch dev. Very straight to the point, okay. And we can just see our code or like our status, which is the same. So what have we done? We have created a new branch. Okay, we have created a new branch and we can actually add new files to this as well. So imagine we wanted to create a new Django project in our dev branch. Okay, we can just go ahead and maybe make directory Django project. Okay, and change into that. Okay, and we can basically run Django admin start project. I'm going to call this GitHub demo for the purposes of this class. And Django is just going to create a new. Okay, so that's an invalid name. Drop that. Awesome. So we've created a new file and we can see our project here. So let's look at that on VS Code, Django project, and then this is our Django project. Okay. So we see our settings.py and manage.py. Okay. Very straight to the point. And let's say we're going to add this to our GitHub repository. So we can just run git status now. Okay, and let me change back up git status. And we see the new folder Django project, which has not been committed at all. So every single file on that Django project has never been in our version control. So what do we have to do? We have to add the whole project, okay? Or the whole folder rather. But instead of doing that, we can just run git add all since we see that all the files that we want to add them. Okay, and git status again. And we see the new files we added. Okay. And we can just run git commit started Django project. Okay, and we see create mode, created new files. Yeah. And git status. Okay, so nothing on our working bread while we're clean basically. So let's push this to our remote. So we remember we are pulling from dev, but remote doesn't have any dev, so we're most likely going to get an error. But let's just go ahead and do that. Best practice. Okay, so could not find remote reference for dev branch. That's fine. So we just push git push origin dev, and GitHub is smart enough to auto create that branch for us. So Sabi. Okay, so you see, new branch dev to dev basically. So we've created a new branch. We can just see this status. We can actually check out our GitHub repository. Okay, so we already seen GitHub telling us that we have a new push to our branch dev. Okay, let's just check that out. Okay, and we see that dev is definitely different from master. Okay, so master branch doesn't have any of the Django projects, but dev has all of that. Okay, so that's one thing about branches. Branches can have completely different versions, okay, or completely different files. That's completely fine and completely allowed. But then one last thing to talk about would be pull requests, basically. So you can make a merge, okay, or a pull request from one branch to another, or from one repository to another repository, okay. So we can just call this dev, okay, and then started Django project. Should be fine. Put that in brackets, and we create a pull request. So pull request is just basically a way of merging files, okay. That's merging between branches. And we see the commit we're merging into main from dev. You can just merge that. Okay, and if you go to master, we see that master has all the new code. Our remote master has all the new code, but our local master doesn't know about any of this. So if you do git checkout master, we switch to branch master, okay, and it still thinks that our branch is up to date. And we can list all the files here right now. Okay, and we don't have Django project. Okay, so what do? We do git pull origin master. Origin is the remote name, master is the branch name, okay? And it's going to prompt me for my password. Awesome. So we just pulled the new code or the new changes from our repository. So best practices is that you have a dev branch and a main branch basically, and then you make all your changes to the dev branch and then merge into main. So main is like your production branch or your final release branch or your stable branch. Okay, so don't just make random merges into main whenever you can. Okay, so if you're working on like a project with lots of people, you guys are usually going to have a dev branch, and then you guys are going to make merges into dev, and from dev merge into main when you have a stable product. Okay, and basically that brings us to the end of the whole GitHub demonstration. Okay, if you have questions, you should drop it in the chat box. Okay, and we'll check that out. Tim, anything to add?
No, no, no.
Okay, I'm going to quickly show you guys uh basically a new way of like accessing an editor from a laptop, perhaps your laptop is slow and you are unable to install packages, or you're just having weird issues with your laptop, for example. Jtag provides the basically add a new feature or version basically that allows you to access a new coding environment right from your browser. Okay, so you can just hit the full stop key inside the GitHub repository, and it's going to open an online IDE for you, similar to what you'd see from Gitpod. Okay, and you just be free to edit your files as if you were in VS Code, but this is running directly from my browser. Okay, so you can install files and basically edit your files. Okay, so this is the content of gitignore, basically all the files we should ignore, just a template. Okay, so environment files, fields, etc. Okay, so I got a question. Why do we have to pull before pushing to GitHub? Okay, that's basically to avoid errors where GitHub tells us that we don't have the most recent code and we can't basically overwrite. So GitHub is not going to allow you to overwrite code that is newer than yours. Okay, so you have to get the newest code and push that. That's why you need to pull first before you push. How do you add files to your gitignore? Basically, you just edit your gitignore and add a new file name. So maybe when we want to remove instructions.txt from our version control. Why? Maybe it's secret. Maybe it's something that our company likes to keep secret. Okay, we can just add that, and we can just basically come to our command line. Okay, and we can just come to our command line. This is VS Code. This is Code's way of using JIT. Okay, if you're familiar with that, that should look familiar. And we say added instructions, whichever you prefer. Actually, you could use the JIT you could use VS Code, but I would advise you to get familiar with JIT so you can perform more advanced operations. Okay, and just comment that. Awesome. So if we go back to our repository, we should see that instruction.txt was added to our gtignore. Okay, and let's say we went to maybe yeah, that's basically how you would add your file to gtignore. Yeah, I think we're done with that. So that was basically a demonstration of how to use JIT and push code files to GitHub, okay, and basically maintain your version control over a set of files. So version control works for any language, works for JavaScript, C Sharp, even plain text files, okay? So it's not specific to Python, we just make use of it a lot. Structuring and using Markdown is beyond the scope of today's class. Okay, I think we're done with that. Sim, would you like to start off with OOP, object-oriented programming? Okay, so since we're already at it, let's create a simple explanation of object-oriented programming. Okay, so we got a lot of feedback that people didn't quite get the idea of classes. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly try to explain that. Okay, but before we get to classes, let's quickly go to okay, so we need a quick brief over functions, okay?
Okay, I'll be taking over, so I'll start with functions. Share your. don't know. ID. Okay. Like I said, a lot of people seem not to understand this thing, functions. Some people did not just, in the last tax, they didn't just get how you're supposed to do it. I don't know if I would start with the previous tax or something, but let me just start it from the beginning. It's taking time. Okay, I would say functions is an easy way for you to organize your code, but it's more than that. But to me, that is the best way. That is part of the reason why it was given as the other tax. Because someone also said, why were we giving a template when we could just run it once, when we could just write it any style we like? It was to organize your code. That was the whole essence of the functions. I'll be starting with, like our previous class, we were told def is used for defining a function. I could just say def hello world. Now, this brackets or braces or whatever is you. If you want to pass in a parameter, you could just type something like hi in it. Now, you could to use this hi because in the previous tags, a lot of people did not use the functions. I don't know if I'll open it up. Let me show you what I mean. A lot of people did not use it. And this is it. Yes, this file name wasn't used. A lot of people didn't use it. So I'm going to show you how to use it here. I don't need to do anything. Let's start with, okay. I was going to print something like, if we put it like this function is as simple as it comes, like the basic. If I was to run this, okay. If I was to run this without passing any parameter here, watch and see the error I would get. Now, you can see this. I needed to pass something to it, and it has to be a string. Okay, mustn't be a string. I can pass anything to it since I didn't specify. It changed. Let's pass maybe a list or something. You can see it's printing it here. I don't know if you guys can see this well. Let me see if I can separate it. Okay. So that's it for this. And another thing is, yes, there was a common error in your previous tags, a very common error is in the sense that you see this return. Those people did not use this return. And I will show you what it's going to give you if when you don't use your return. Let's see. Okay. Let me assign this to a variable. If I print the value of hold me, if I run it, can you see it shows none? It shows none because nothing was returned. Absolutely nothing was returned. So if you had to use this in a function, if you had to use this somewhere else, it is going to give you an error because you cannot operate on none. None is not a string. It's not a dictionary. It's nothing. You can't use it for anything. Okay, let me even simulate it. Let's say none plus 1. You can see the error. That this happens when you don't return anything. Now let's return something. Okay, let me just go with the high. Okay, to still give me an error because I cannot add a string and this thing together. So instead, I would you can see the difference, right? There's no error. This is why this high is very important. This return is very important. If you don't return anything from your function, nothing, and you are going to use the function somewhere else, nothing happened. Let me just give you, let me just use the code for the previous distance sharps. So since all of you should be able to relate to that, since you have done that task already, instead of just doing anything. And yes, you should be getting a correction for this tax already. This is not actually a correction. I'm just giving an example of functions. And I think I have that story dot. Okay. Passing file name. You don't need to. A lot of people duplicated this. This instead of them to passing file names to open, they wrote story.txt instead, which is not supposed to be so. You're supposed to use the file name. You're supposed to pass in what was given to you for the parameter that is given here. That's why it was named file name. So another thing, yes, is like a lot of people do not use read. They use read line. There's a difference. There's a difference between the two of them. This read line and read lines are two different things. Read line will only read the first line. Read line is okay, similar to read. If you are, you might have noticed that your code only counted half of it. It didn't go through. Anyway, I just want to stimulate what happens when you don't use return. Okay, I could leave down. You can see this is highlighted. Are you seeing what my IDE says? Cannot find reference, split in none. It's only yet to give you an error. So I want you to see the error in action. Let you see everything. It's not me just saying what happens or what doesn't happen. And yes, yes. How you call a function is just, you say the name of the function. Ah, okay. I just also remembered something. Just right, keep your notes here. Okay. Can you see this gave me an error? It gave me an error because of, I'm coming, I have to move away from the noise. I have to move. Okay. Like I was saying, it gave an error due to the fact that I was using none. Okay. Like I was saying, it gave me an error due to the fact that I was using none. Okay. I was using none. So nothing is returned from here, from this function. Nothing is returned. Like you can see, there's no return here, which produced this error we are seeing. All this error was caused because nothing was returned. So you should know when you want to return and when you don't want to return. You mustn't always return. Some functions don't need you to return anything. If you're writing a function, you should not return always. But I'll do that. So you can see no error. Our error is just gone, magically gone. That is one, that is for the non part. So I didn't want to do this, but let's just finish it off. I don't know if you guys can see this well, but let me see if I can zoom in anymore. Okay. This is just me rushing through the assignment. I just want you to look at this well. I will also show some things. I just want to finish this sharp. What am I writing again? If I run this code, let's see. Now, can you see this? Can you see this?
Steam, I don't think we can hear you.
I said, can one hear me now? Don't.
Yeah, we can
No,
hear you
if I
now.
can be heard.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Anyway, okay. So if I was to continue now, as you can see, this is another function inside this. It's what it means here is a nested function. That's what it means. Hello. Oh. Hello. Hello. So can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly now.
Network issues. Network issues. Sorry about this. So can you hear me now?
Clear as a bell.
Okay, so running this now, running this will result in nothing will happen. Okay, let me just do this. This will not print. It will not print. We just need to, as you can see, there's nothing like I am nested. Okay, to make it better. Okay, to make it better now, once I run this, you can also see nothing runs, nothing happens here because this function is not called. It's nested, yes, but it's not called. So if I just, and I run this function again, can you see the difference? It's called now. I could also nest inside the same function. I could nest it again. I could nest another one, but I'll still have to do the same thing. So I just wanted to show that you can make functions run repeatedly with different parameters. You can nest a function. You can, well, and one other thing is a function in a loop. If you put a return in a loop, it will exit on the first execution of the loop. Let me show you what I mean. As you can see, this is aligned to the for. The return is aligned to the for. So let me just move that in and let you watch what I mean. Did you notice? Only once was printed. What happened to upon a time? What happened to all the other parts of this thing? It's not there. Because of this only executes once. And that is all. It doesn't execute twice or whatever. It doesn't even consign it. The only thing it knows is to execute once. You cannot continuously call it just once and that is all. And you can return multiple statements. It mustn't be just one word or whatever. You can return okay, let me return the split text. Okay, before I do that, I don't know. Let me try something. Let's see if it works. Okay, it did, but okay. Now look at this. Normally, this is supposed to. Do you see what happened here? It multiplied it, but it's not executed. Like if I was to run it in print,
it will actually give me new lines, new lines, new lines. It will give me new lines instead of just returning it like that. So running that again, you can see the first one is the first parameter. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's a bracket here. There's a bracket here. Because multiple parameters were returned. I could also return another parameter. Let me see what else I can return. Almost things, but you see it's the third one now. Each of them are different. I want to try something. Let's see. Oh, you see, I can select it as it's a list. I selected the first index. We'll go back to select the second one. I don't know if you guys can see the difference. One of them was a dictionary. This is a list. This second one now is a list. And the third one will be this by for now. You can see the difference. So I think that would be all for this. I don't know if you have any questions. Is there any question about this? And please, this is not the solution to the assignment. There are some things I did not do here. You get the solution to the previous rich text assignment. Okay, so that will be all for me.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick overview of how to run a Python script for people that got lost on that. Okay, so very quickly, we're going to look at how to create Python scripts and how to run them basically from our terminal and from VS Code. Okay.
We'll be moving over to classes now.
I think we'll cover that in a recorded video stream because of time. We've spent a lot of time on the call already. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to just start off from there. So basically, if you want to create a Python file, how do you create a Python file? Okay, so let's go to documents. And let's say we want to save it inside a coding folder. Okay, inside whatever folder you would like. Okay, so I want to save it here. Okay, so it's just a normal file, and you can basically create it like so. Okay, so my Python file. Okay, and this is one way to create a Python file. You can open it with VS Code and do whatever you'd like with that. Okay, so maybe we say print my Python file. Okay, that's one way to do it, and we could just actually double click this. And the problem with I guess I've already got it set up to open VS Code for me automatically. If you just double click that by default, what what's going to happen is that you're going to get Python is going to run that file and just going to close. So it's going to create a new process that's going to run that file and basically close when that file is done running. Okay, so that's not really helpful to us. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to run this file from our terminal. Okay, so for another way to do that would be to come here to copy this. This is the path to the file. Okay, and just cd into that and then run Python my Python file. .py. Okay, and that runs our Python file. So for those of us that are still confused about how to use Python files, basically, and to run Python files, okay, that's how to do it. There's a big difference between that and then creating a Python REPL session. Okay, this is a REPL session. You can use it to like test things out, okay? But it doesn't save to any file. It's just for testing purposes, okay? Yeah. And then yeah, that's basically it. Then classes, we're going to release a recorded video properly on classes. There are already a couple of resources on the Zero YouTube channel, but we're going to add more to that, okay? It's per request. Okay, but basically classes allow us to create new data types. So if we have integer data type and string data type by default provided by Python. But what if we want to create our own data type? Okay, so we want our own zero data type. Okay, so zero training data type. Okay, and zero training data type might have attributes like students. Okay, we might have attributes like mentors. We have an attribute like year or cohort. Okay, we have an attribute like tasks. Okay, and you might have an attribute like tracks too. So we might want to create our own data type to hold all of this information and to model it properly. So that's where classes come in. Okay, so we can create a class that has all of these attributes. Okay, we're going to, you can check out the release. Okay, and the video is already on the YouTube channel on classes. Okay, but then this is one solution. So definite is called whenever a new instance of the class is created. What's an instance of a class? Basically, we take the template, which is the class, and we create a new instance of it. So think of it like blueprint and building. Okay, so we've taken that blueprint and we've built a building. Okay, so students are equal to a list of students. Okay, so Bob, John, doesn't really matter. Okay, self that mentors, Steam. Okay, and self the cohort could be 2022. Okay, self the tasks could be reading text file, counting words, etc. Okay, self the tracks could be UI UX, could be Python, could be HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, so this is one way to like create our own data type, and maybe when the new function dev get students. What does this do? This is just creating a new method on the class. Okay, so it gives us the new ability to call get students. Okay, so just the way that string has a function called strip. Okay, and we call that with maybe like strip strings. Okay, or string dot split. Okay, this is a method. Okay, so we are creating our own new method for our data type zero training. Okay, and we can just say return self dot what. So self is the instance. Self dot what students basically. So self is the instance. Okay. Self is the instance of the class. That's the building we built from the blueprint. Okay, now we can just like try that out. Okay, and just print that out. Again, how do we run our file? We basically copy the path to that. And then Python or the prime. Awesome. So that's just a quick overview of how to use classes. Okay. I don't think we have any questions on that. Okay, so we're basically going to just run through a couple of questions on the YouTube chat box. So if you still have any questions, quickly drop them on the YouTube chat box and we'll try to attend to them. Okay. Steam is going to be dropping them here for me to take a look, and we'll just basically look at them together. Yeah. Okay, so somebody's asking how does he tackle the Django task? I think the instructions are very clear. You are expected to create a virtual environment. Okay, and then when you create that virtual environment, you're expected to activate it. And what are virtual environments? Virtual environments allow you to isolate your dependencies and basically create smaller like environments of Python basically. So you can isolate dependencies. Different environments cannot access their own dependencies or packages basically. So that way you can prevent conflict or like weird errors basically. So yeah, so you're expected to create a virtual environment and you're expected to install Django in that virtual environment. So you can use virtual env to create virtual environments. You can use pipenv to create virtual environments. Okay. And then when you're done with that, you should just install Django and you should run Django admin start project. And you should basically take that newly created Django project and push it to GitHub. Okay. So some people run into an error basically when running the reading text files and they couldn't find the story.txt file. That's because of how you ran the file basically. You were not in the right folder. So next time run your Python script from the right folder or with from a terminal basically, or use VS Code to open a folder and then run the Python code from there. Okay, Steam over to you then.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Someone asked about how they can use this thing, the return, the multiple returns from the functions. So I just want to run through that. Okay. Okay. So okay. So now I remember I use this. I remember I use this index stuff to be able to assign it to different variables. Let's say, like I said, this returns 3 values. You could do something like, um, okay, um, equals to, as you can see, there's no error, right? If I print the values of each of these variable, like word count, I'll comment this out. If I print the values for each of these, do you see word count printed the dictionary, since that is the first value that's being returned. The second one is text. So I'll change that to text. Text is, since I split the text, what is being returned is actually a list, since this returns a list. And the third one now is, I said it was string. So we can see all the trees was returned. There are other ways you can do that. So I think variable unpacking, but we'll stick to these ones for now. So I hope that answers that question. I don't know if I can see any other question. Let me sharply check. Oh, no. Okay, so that should be all for this. And okay, yeah, some questions from our surveyor. So let's see. I don't know. Let me see if I can answer some. Okay, someone asked about the concept of classes and objects. We have answered that already. Originally, this session was not even supposed to be about class and objects. It's supposed to be a Q&A session, but well, things did not go as planned again. So we are sorry that we did not keep to that. And I don't understand. Okay, you should. Oh, object-oriented OOP was explained at the beginning. The explanation should be broken down. Yes, about the explanation should be broken down. We are trying our best to see what we can do towards that. Yes, that's that's part of the reason we held this session for, let's see. Yes, we also try to make it more elementary. I can see a lot of it is talking about beginner friendly. Yes, we'll try our best to work that out. Hopefully, we should not be having that issue with the next class. And one of the reasons why we give you a task before hosting the class is because we want you to like get the habit of, like, let's say, do some research first. If you notice, we give the task on Sunday or Monday. On Wednesday, so you have a class of it on it. Is to let you at least do some work. So the class is supposed to like smoothen it. But seeing what you are going to do. I'm still checking. Yeah, someone said isn't 3 months going to be too small to learn development? I don't know if I should share this if you guys want to see that. I don't know. But no. Okay, it's not like it's too long or it's too short. The thing is, we are giving you more than the basics here. What you are giving here is, if you understand this, you should be able to use any other resource. Like, you shouldn't have any problem whatsoever. Okay, someone said they have an issue with return and print. Return and print, let's see. Return and print they're actually different things. Like I showed you in the previous slide, return is you can only be used inside, but let's say functions. And aside that, return doesn't listen. It only executes once and it kills the function. Once a return is reached, that function is ended. It doesn't do any other thing. While print just keeps on executing whatever you throw at it, it will be able to execute it. No issue with that. Let me see. Behind schedule. Okay. Someone asked when they should use the int function. The int that is the underscore. Okay, yes. I'm not sure it was mentioned, but all those functions, this is not the first time you see, but all those dash things that have double dash and int or whatever, they are called dunder. If they have double, they are called dunder. It's like it does special stuffs in Python. Yes, so like I said, a lot of things here is about classes and classes. Okay, to give you guys context, I mean, let you know what I'm talking of. I'll just quickly share the screen so you can see what I'm talking of here. So yes, you can see a lot of things here is about Python, about classes. More video, more videos. We already have a lot of videos on the YouTube channel. You just need to search for the playlist. And let's see. Lesson should be dropped before tax. I already explained why this was done. Yes, one for Mimi. She's not here. More resources, more guidelines for that. Yes, we're also trying our best to improve on these guidelines and so, because it seems a lot of people don't understand what we mean when we drop the tax. So we are trying to make it more forward. Hopefully, this week's tax also we are clear to you guys. If it's not clear for you this week, maybe next week or the upper one, whenever we'll keep on improving on that. Oh, sorry about that. By giving out more, what's this? See what I mean? Classes, there's classes everywhere. There's classes everywhere, and yes, to clarify on grading, there's one grading automatically, but if you have an error in grading, it should be half of your mark. If the mark is 10, you get 5. If it's 5, you get 2.5. If you had noticed the previous tags, one that had what they call it, stories or whatever, you are not supposed to modify the stories line. Even if you wanted to modify, you could have used things like os.get current directory or so and put it there. It gave a lot of people error, and luckily, most of you did not get half of your mark. Instead, you are still getting things like 4 or even 4.8 or so. Some of them was overlooked. We shouldn't have to be fixing the errors because it's time. A lot of people are complaining that we have not graded. If I could show you what was going on, only 2 that I graded. I probably graded a lot of people's tags that had one error or the other, which is taking time because I have to fix it and run the code to know if your code is actually working or not. Let's see. Lectures. Okay. Let me move to this one and see if we have. There's no questions here too, so I think I will stop here. Since I can't see any other thing here.
Someone say you're making it too complex. We do provide resources for your tasks. Resources are provided. If I open them now, you'll be seeing resources there. Decorators. I would have thought about that, but we don't have time. We have already exceeded our limit. But it's just functions with a special ways of running them. Okay, that's all. I can't keep on. Okay, that's all for me. Me and Toby are out.